How's it going, everybody? My name's Rudy Luttrell.
And I'm Tyler Apple.
And we are the Mystic Mentors.
Hey, Rudy.
Yes,
We sling cardboard on tabletop, right?
I do.
And we play a game called Magic the Gathering, right?
You do that, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. We're going to be going to the Gathering of Gamers, dear viewers. It's here in the Midwest and is an event where local businesses and tabletop gamers get together to enjoy these wonderful hobbies such as Magic the Gathering, LARPing, and so on. Excuse me.
Big event, big event.
We're going to be attacking today how to prepare for a big local event. We'll be going to a Winnabox on this next Sunday, and they're offering a massive Lord of the Rings box, I believe. Are they not, Rudy?
Yes, they are. And boy, I need me some One Rings for this upcoming Modern season.
I have exactly none. How many do you have?
So, the next one.
We're going to show you through our experiences what we've done to prepare and be successful at Winnaboxes in the past, and what we intend to do for this upcoming event.
Yeah, with any upcoming event, there is a lot of planning and stuff, especially meta-oriented. For us, our local meta is very much mid-range and control-oriented. There's actually not a lot of aggro, and there's not a lot of combo players. Like, we don't see a lot of Lotus Field or anything.
No, there's not a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players in our meta. A lot of folks here like to interact.
Yeah, they like to play Magic.
They do. They do like to play Magic, like to play with their cardboard. When you go into your local meta, you get a huge benefit because your deck choice, you control a higher percentage than you normally do. So we have RC Atlanta coming up in December. We are both qualified.
Yep.
Since we are both qualified, Mr. Luttrell, that means, of course, going into a wide event, we don't have the benefit of knowing exactly what the meta is going to be.
Right, yeah.
But you, dear viewer, because this is a large local event and you probably know a good amount of the players going, you know so-and-so is on this deck and so-and-so is on this deck. And you get the benefit of insider information that won't get you in trouble, unlike certain celebrities. So our deck choices for this upcoming event are going to be, for myself, Golgari Citadel, and the prior viewed, if you've seen our videos, please do, Mardu Midrange.
And for myself, I'm on Boros Convoke or my RCQ winning list, which, I mean, if it wins an RCQ, it's probably good enough for a local event.
Probably, maybe. So, Rudy, let's go ahead and narrow that down for our viewers. As far as which deck we're going to pick, we have Mardu Midrange for myself, which is a mid-rangey control list, as we've mentioned in the past. Really relying on the fact that folks aren't prepared for multiple planeswalkers active at the same time. And then on that control plan of just remove your opponent's best permanents, and until I can stop talking about it, and I won't, Vanishing Verse is such an excellent removal spell for the deck, especially in our mono green heavy meta, because we don't just have mid-range here, we've got mono green, and it's not going away anytime soon. Just check out Goldfish. Over 15% of the meta share is mono green.
Yeah, it is a ridiculous deck to play against, but it's not going anywhere, like you said, so we have to prepare for it. And I agree, Vanishing Verse is huge, and even with against the control decks, landing multiple planeswalkers, it is very difficult for them to fight through a Liliana of the Veil. Like, I didn't realize how hard it was for a control deck to get there against that card.
Oh yeah.
Even today.
Yes, even with Liliana not in favor as much as she used to be, she's fallen from that pedestal hard.
Yeah.
But you can still strip their hand and just make them wish that they'd drawn their seventh land to activate their Hall of the Storm Giants.
Yeah.
So, rolling on from there, we have my other deck. It's a pet deck of mine. Golgari Citadel has yet to be featured on the channel, but it's coming. And Golgari Citadel, if you've not seen this deck before, uses Bolas's Citadel in order to combo kill your opponent with a mixture of Zulaport Cutthroat, Prosperous Innkeeper, and their good buddy Woe Strider is just there to watch and make sure that it all goes according to plan to control the top of your deck. And between these two decks, I'm honestly considering Golgari Citadel. Golgari Citadel allows me to go over the top of even mono green. We just did our testing actually tonight.
Yeah.
And I ran over the mono green deck in both games. Only one of them was a Citadel game, because this deck's backup plan is excellent. Golgari Citadel is most likely my choice because, again, it goes over the top of mono green. We've tested against Rakdos mid-range in the past and more recently, and the deck continues to just show that its top decks are just so over the top of what Rakdos mid-range can handle, because almost all your cards are 2 creatures in 1, and almost all your cards generate value by dying, which is their primary plan of beating you, is killing your creatures. And you're like, fantastic, I'm on board. Let's both burn the pier together and let them be sent to Valhalla or whatever afterlife you happen to prescribe to.
Also, just putting it out there, traditionally speaking, Rakdos decks don't deal with any deck with Coco very, very well.
Yes, it is also a Coco deck.
I mean, like, we've talked about it before. When you're in the mid-range style, like Rakdos decks, 2-for-1s are huge. So if you're getting Coco and he gets a 4-for-1, 4 bodies for 1 card, I don't think there's a way that the deck can handle that.
And since 2 of the most popular decks in our local meta are mid-range decks, like Rakdos midrange and Mono Green, I think that the Citadel deck's going to be an excellent choice for the Gathering of the Gamers Win-a-Box on this coming next Sunday. Excuse me. It's going to be an excellent choice for this next coming Sunday.
I agree. It's a bit of spice, and like you said, it's kind of a niche deck. Not a lot of people. It's not on anyone's radar, so I think it'll be a little bit of a surprise. And that's kind of why I'm leaning towards Boros Convoke as an excellent segue, is because it is a little bit more of a niche deck, and we don't really have, as I've explained before, a lot of aggro decks. I think there's one aggro player right now, at least in our local area, and he's not playing any aggro decks that, you know, try and put your opponent to 0 with combat damage. At least
he's not.
Boros Convoke attacks from a very, very aggressive angle, and sometimes you just get 14-15 power on turn 2 and win the game. It's very much a Greasefang feel, where sometimes they Greasefang on 3 and you can't beat that, but this deck can. This deck can see a Greasefang get hit for 13 and follow up with 18 damage on the attack, and if the Greasefang player, which they do often, has shocked in a land or hurt themselves at all, they're going to die. And even its non-free wins, the deck is surprisingly resilient against board wipes. In my testing, I've been board wiped a few times and come back from it. That's not to say that it works every time, because, I mean, things happen. I think Boros attacks from a different angle, and I don't think our meta is ready for it, because it goes under green, it goes under control, and the mid-range decks struggle with it. Traditionally speaking, Rakdos does. Now, I know Sakdos is the favored deck right now, and it does struggle with Sakdos,
yes,
but I'm expecting there's not going to be a whole lot of Sakdos there. I think we're going to be a relatively focused meta. And for my 5-color mid-range deck, I mean, what can I say? I won an RCQ with that. I'm hot on the deck for sure.
Right.
Like, it's just... but that also, unfortunately, means, and especially for local tournaments, viewers, you have to keep in mind that, like, if you win a big tournament with a deck, people are going to expect that deck at the next tournament. That's right. And especially, like, locally, that's just how people work. Like, if I win with this deck, someone else is going to be like, oh, he won with that deck, so maybe I can win with that deck, and they pick it up.
No, that's absolutely true. To give you an idea, viewers, of how much the impressions you can leave on your local player base that they take into account, you might think, oh, well, they just forget about me and they forget about my deck. Good competitive players do not forget.
Yep.
They remember the archetypes you favor or what you like. To give you an example, in our most recent RCQ won by Mr. Luttrell here, I came in, I was talking to folks, I was watching my son play in his first RCQ, super proud moment. And one of the players came up to me and said, oh, hey, Ty, how are you doing? I was like, oh, it's good to see you so-and-so. And he was like, you know, this deck that my friend is on, and by the way, this deck actually was the one that played against you in the finals, is exactly your kind of deck. And I had to pause for a second and be like, hold on, what do you mean what my deck? What kind of deck do I like? And he was just saying, you like blue-red Izzet Drakes and Phoenix decks. Now, viewers, you need to understand, this gentleman I've seen each other several times. We always have great conversations. I realized he'd only ever seen me on blue-red decks. He's not there for the interim when Ty is not playing these decks. And honestly, I haven't been on blue-red in like, what, 2 months now? Something like that.
It's been a while.
It's been a while for Magic Age. And so that just shows the powerful impression that you can leave on your local player base.
And just to give you guys a grasp of the scale, that's somebody from like 2 hours away. So
yes.
he's not even in our town. They have such few interactions, and just by identifying a player with a certain archetype, I mean, that you leave impressions. Yeah, people pick up on that. Especially good players. Mm-hmm. They'll know what type of deck certain people bring.
Yep. And that's a good tip for you, viewer. Remember the decks your local meta are playing, because obviously that's going to influence your deck choice. That's going to inform you about the meta, and it's going to raise your percentages at possibly taking down your big convention win-a-box, your local RCQ.
Just to reiterate on some of the points that we made, Ty, what are the things we should be doing when preparing for a local event?
Number 1. Identify your meta. Do not just pick a deck randomly and then go in there and expect to win. It is okay if you just want to participate and have a great time and go and view the convention, okay? But coming at this from the Mystic Mentors, where we're looking at with a competitive mindset, you need to actually, I do this. I write down my meta. I write down who's probably going to be there, what they play, and then I actually lay it out on a spreadsheet and say, okay, this is the meta. These are the percentages. If I mix them up into a bracket, who am I likely to get? What kind of matchup? Okay. And for this tournament, we identified that mono green or a mid-range deck like Rakdos is the most likely one. Number 2, we're going to select a deck. So based off that information, we can now select our deck and pick our pet deck that we think will do well into that meta and be prepared to draw our weapon and go on to the battlefield.
And that's not to say that you can't play the deck that you want to play. By all means, in a competitive event, you can take whatever deck you want. Picking a meta deck, that doesn't change the statistics at all too much. Like, you can pick up any meta deck and go to any tournament and probably do well as long as you know what you're doing, you know your matchups. However, like, don't be afraid to put a little bit of spice in there and to make your own brews, because each of us are on a list that isn't on anyone's radar, which can be a meta decision, and I think mine is a meta decision, certainly.
Mine's because of my addiction to spice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Taking that into account, play whatever deck you want to play, but take that deck and try and make it as competitive as possible or sculpt it to your meta.
So, speaking of tailoring your deck, you need to be careful not to advance into the echo chamber alone, dear viewer. You cannot go into a tournament having not played your deck or having not tested out the sideboarded version of your deck. Be your own devil's advocate, or if you have a team, hint hint wink wink, you might want to test with your team or your local players who you're good friends with and try your deck out against these matchups. Don't just theory craft and then go in there and expect it to work just how the theory craft works. There's so much personal bias that has gotten myself in trouble in these kinds of tournaments.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people have gotten in trouble just picking up a deck, and that's why I said you can pick up any meta deck and go in and probably do fine. But you still have to know the meta. You still have to run those reps. Mm-hmm. And we talk about it all the time with our team. Like, the only way to get better at bad matchups is to play against those bad matchups.
Right.
And you may hate it. We have a few players around here that hate playing against Control. They're a little bit newer, so anyone who's new to Magic knows what it's like to play against Control for the first time.
Yeah.
And they hate it. But getting those players ready to verse that deck or like to go against unfavorable matchups is important.
Yes.
And they have to run those reps.
They also have to run those reps because those biases you were just talking about there, Rudy, are often what are going to skew your sideboard, and it's going to absolutely ruin your win rate.
Yeah. Oh man. Actually, at the beginning of the year, I was way overcompensating for Greasefang.
Oh yeah.
Like, I had poisoned myself multiple RCQs where I would top 8 and then have nothing to sideboard against, like a Control deck, or nothing to sideboard against mono green, because I had just only put in stuff against Greasefang because that deck absolutely traumatized me and I hated that matchup. But now that I'm seasoned, like, you take a look at my black-red sideboard now, I've got, like, sure, still 5 or 6 cards for that matchup, but that's a far cry from the 11 to 13 that it was.
Yes. Yes, you sided in 13 cards.
Yeah.
That was incredible. I enjoyed watching it happen. Be your own devil's advocate. Test with your local friends, trusted teammates, people that you know will give you an unbiased opinion and tell you when you are wrong.
Just a thought. What if they don't have those people?
So if you don't have those people, dear viewer, there are 2 things you can do about this. First off, if you are aware your local big event is coming up, then you can be proactive. You can go out and stop by an FNM at some point and play your deck and see how it goes. You're like, oh, they'll see it.
It won't matter.
It won't matter.
It won't matter.
They might see the deck. It might be a little bit of a surprise to them, but they're also going to look at it and say, well, that's just what they played at an FNM.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of players will bring the deck that they're not playing to an FNM.
Yes.
And so the mix is so skewed, you can't take anything anyone takes to an FNM seriously, because they might not be the deck that they're taking to the tournament. But it might be, regardless of which, they'll never know. It does not matter. Take your deck to an FNM, test it, play it. And like you said, be proactive and reach out. A lot of the communities around here are so nice. Like, some of the nicest people I know, genuine people, come from this game. And I'll say that to death, because a lot of my close friends I met through Magic.
Yeah, Midwest players, at least in our experience, have definitely been very positive, open people.
Yeah.
At least willing to throw down a game with you and give you the matchups you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's another thing. You can ask about your meta, your local meta. If you just ask around, people will tell you. They're not going to try and like skew the meta. They're just going to, and if you know you talk to one person, go talk to 3 others,
Yeah.
and you're going to start putting them together and be like, oh, so apparently there's a lot of this style of deck here. It's not insurmountable to just go and ask a few questions. It may be daunting at first, but if you do, who knows? You might even make a few friends.
Absolutely. And speaking of making a few friends, my dear viewer, we hope that these tips were helpful for you, that you'll be able to identify your meta, select your deck, and be your own devil's advocate. And as you exit the archives tonight, dear viewer, we encourage you to like, subscribe, and please come back and see some more of our Versus videos and see some more of our discussions on how to improve in competitive play.
Yep, absolutely.